Jet Magazine, December 15, 1960. Foreign Students in Negro Colleges. The title of the article, which did not give the name of the original author, is Foreign Students Readily Accepted at Negro Colleges. While the U.S. government leaders debate a program of expanded foreign aid, some 1,200 students from 55 nations flocked to 50 Negro college campuses last year to provide individual self-help for their native lands. Foremost among American training grounds for students from faraway lands is Tuskegee Institute, where foreign students are considered as commonplace as the Booker T. Washington Monument. Typical among this year's freshman crop is 25-year-old Sylvia Lalamintic of Jakarta, Indonesia, who is attending the Alabama school under a Tuskegee Indonesian training project. Because international training programs seldom provide student transportation to and from home, Sylvia, with her hometown roommate, Helene Laigik, work part-time as campus secretaries to earn their $850 return fare. Another pioneer college in the training of foreign students is Virginia's Hampton Institute, one of the nation's oldest Negro colleges. On the campus by the sea, there are some 24 students from 9 countries, including Hungary, Israel, and Ethiopia. Leading student on the Hampton campus is pretty Julia Solmarni, whose father was killed in the 1952 war in her hometown of Semarang, Middle Java, Indonesia. Julia is studying nursing and plans to return home unless the right opportunity comes along, either professional or romantic. At Morehouse College in Atlanta, Emmanuel R. Isidio, a senior in business administration from Accra, Ghana, is a member of the small, intense group of Africans at the all-male school. Isidio, who aspires for leadership in his own country, has already demonstrated it on the Morehouse campus. He is the president of the Interracial Intercollegiate Council of Atlanta and vice president of the Canterbury Association, religious student organization. Lincoln, PA University, which has introduced Ghana's President Kwame Nkrumah and Nigeria's Governor General Nnamdi Azikiwe, can boast of a long tradition of educating future leaders of new independent countries. Winston Blackett of Barbados, West Indies, is the current future leader on the all-male campus where he studies economics. Blackett, recently elected to Who's Who in American universities and colleges, is among 37 students from Nigeria, Kenya, and the West Indies. According to the International Exchange Institute of International Education, there are a total of 65,328 foreign citizens in U.S. schools, with Howard University in Washington having 777, for the highest percentage of any American college. Although some students prefer Negro colleges, the effect of their treatment as voluntary minority group members cannot be overlooked. In general, students from the darker countries face the same kind of segregation and discrimination that American Negroes experience, admits George Hauser, director of the American Committee on Africa. Despite these possible hardships, one Tuskegee official points out, many foreign students prefer Negro colleges because they are readily accepted and become so much a part of the college that the word foreign is almost forgotten. I'm getting an early start on the discussion about college education in the United States, the HBCUs, and that recent Supreme Court decision that struck down affirmative action. I'm going to talk about that much later with Linda Brown of Brown versus Board of Education and Martha Lum of Lum versus Rice in Mississippi. Right now, I wanted to touch on a quicker story. And I know this is going to probably make a lot of FBAs mad. When I went to read both Black, Asian, and Asian comments about the end of affirmative action, there are different reactions that vary that show that neither's a monolith, and I thought that was a good thing. But a lot of FBAs had a visceral reaction saying, well, that's okay because we always have our HBCUs to go back to, which is a valid and legitimate argument given that the HBCUs have sort of a different culture than your typical American colleges, and for their time were very necessary. Some HBCUs are such national institutions like Tuskegee University, which at the time was called Tuskegee Institute when Booker T. Washington founded well up into his death. Howard University, Fisk, probably Hampton, I imagine. Bethune-Cookman I'll throw in there. Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, and Spelman. I don't see those schools ever going anywhere. Once they were established, I think they're going to be around. The issue that may make a lot of FBAs upset is that I believe those schools will increasingly start to accept more white students and more students of Hispanic descent. How the Asian community will play into that varies based on this Supreme Court decision, because I suspect that a lot of Asian students will still prefer the Ivy League. Here's the thing, though. America being a free country, if Asian students want to go to HBCUs, and to my knowledge, I found a few articles, and there are some that still do, them not being black is not going to bar them from going. If they have the grades or they meet the criteria, they're still going to get into HBCUs based on the minute amount of research I've done. Please go do your own research. You can read into it how you want, but for the most part, I think a lot are trying to line the Ivy League. But see, the thing about it is that as far back as Tuskegee's time with Booker T. Washington alive, Asian students had already been invited to study at those schools, the HBCUs. Now, while Alabama's Tuskegee Institute was allowing Asians in, at the time, Tennessee, where Fisk is located, because Fisk is one of the more well-known also, the state of Tennessee had a law enacted saying that foreign students could not study in that state. So that's the contrast between the two, whereas Tuskegee Institute could do it legally. In Alabama, Fisk in Tennessee could not, due to those constraints. And I'm going to leave an article at the bottom about people of Asian descent who went to HBCUs. Some of these people I couldn't really find, so that's the reason I didn't reference them. But if you look at this photo right here, you see a gentleman in his national traditional dress. That is Malcolm Awana Kairahara, who had a great experience at Tuskegee Institute. That is him with more foreign students from different countries who were a part of Tuskegee's class of 1908. So over 100 years ago, no one batted an eye that Asian students, I believe they call them the Nikkei, attended HBCUs. Not that they weren't welcome in white institutions, or because there had been some students of Asian heritage who attended white institutions. It's just that Kaiwahara had a wonderful experience and wanted his younger sister Nobu to also attend. But there was fear that her being a woman at that time, maybe some Japanese traditions at that time, that she was unable to attend. I'm not sure if Nobu wound up at Tuskegee or not, but it is said, and I can't find it unfortunately, that Booker T. Washington sent a letter ensuring that her being a woman did not bar her from attending. Booker T. Washington was progressive in that way, in that women were educated from the onset of Tuskegee Institute, what we now call Tuskegee University. Women were allowed to have a central role in that schooling. They were not barred necessarily because of their gender, right? But people got it in their head that somehow we can all run back to HBCUs and that's going to be the cure-all, the be-all, as if there was no solidarity at that time between the Asian and Black community when Booker T. Washington himself made the effort. And so great was his efforts that when he visited Seattle in the early 1900s, the Japanese consul had some kind of, I think, banquet in his honor with well over 200 guests as a thank you, I think, for his contributions to students of Japanese descent. And if you take into account what was going on at the time, especially with the Blumenbach racial categories, Booker T. Washington would rather have seen Japan in the good light as a nation that was rising than to hinder their progress. And their welcome at Tuskegee was just an indication of how progressive he was for the time. And when you go research now, there are still people who prefer to go to HBCUs. And it's not as if no Asian students have still gone, very little in number, but they go. If you all go look up Cindy Wilson, she was born in Korea and adopted by an African-American family and brought back to the United States as a baby, because at the time her African-American mother and father, I'll use that term because she uses the term African-American. I prefer the term Black American. But since that was her parents, will use that term. Okay. She was brought back to the United States and the parents end up divorcing, but she still has a relationship with them. And they changed her name from her Korean birth name to Cindy Wilson. To make a long story short, when she got older, she ended up attending HBCU. And that's probably because she had only known some positive aspects of African American culture. And with any culture, you're going to find positive and negative. I didn't put this story and read that story out of Jet Magazine to tick anybody off. It wasn't something that I was going to stir the pot. But the thing about it is when people get on here and say, at least we have our own HBCUs to go back to, as much as this might bother you, anyone of Asian descent who has the criteria can also get into those institutions.